it's my pleasure to introduce Tom Moyer. When I joined CCL in 2017, he was definitely one of the leaders that mentored me and got me engaged and oriented. Uh, and I wanted to just say three things about him. He can speak for himself about your catch on about all the important stuff. But let me just say three things, and that is that number one, not long after I joined, I was invited to his home with his wife Lauren and I found out quickly we had a lot in common. We were both started out in engineering. I moved on to other things fairly quickly, but we both worked for the same engineer entrepreneur named Steve Jacobson, who was doing a lot of cutting edge things, and we had a lot in common to talk about. I moved on, but Tom since then has been involved in a lot of impressive engineering feats. Right now he works in robotics in the defense industry, and hope we might hear a little bit about that. A lot of interesting stuff. So he's very well grounded in science and engineering. Second thing is that Tom is a master teacher, and at the same time he has been an engineer. He has also been a teacher, McGillis School, I believe it is, teaching young folks about technology and science, and really has a passion for it, as well as a lot of skill, and that will be evident to you. And he's very much a teacher at heart. And the third thing is he's a leader. And when I joined CCL, I think you were the leader of the chapter, then moved on to being the leader of the state of the Utah chapters. Since then, he's recruited Mark Peterson to join him as a co-state leader, because he's had many other things. But Tom is a master at lobbying, and he's done some very remarkable things in the lobbying area. And I hope you talk about his interaction with Mia Love, and then with John Curtis, are the two that stand out in my mind. But there's so many other great things he's done on Capitol Hill, here and in the nation's capital. So anyway, turn it over to you, Tom. Thanks so much for coming.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Dave. Well, I guess I'll start by saying that I think you all are extremely important in our lobbying work in Utah. I know some of you are not from Utah, but for those of us in Utah, 100% of the legislators at the federal level that we talk to are LDS, and 100% of them are Republican. And because our group is not 100% LDS and not 100% Republican, it is extremely useful for those of us who are not to have the opportunity to talk to people who are and learn from them. I will never pretend to be something I'm not, but I think it helps us learn how to talk to people who are different from us in ways that build bridges rather than break them. And that's, I've been learning from Dave and from Bill Barron since the day I joined CCL. And we all, every interaction we have with legislators, with people we're trying to persuade, makes us better at it. So, Dave, I'm happy to talk about Mia Love. I'm happy to talk about John Curtis. Also happy to talk about our recent lobby day and about the state of play of bipartisan legislation. I gave a talk in 2022 before the passage of the IRA called The Case for Climate Optimism. And that talk was about a month before the IRA passed. And at the time, it was given up for dead. There was, Manchin had pulled the plug, said, we're not going to do this. And Democrats were giving up on Build Back Better. And it looked like nothing was going to happen on climate change, nothing significant with a Democratic trifecta. And heads were down. And the gist of my talk was, it ain't over. There's lots left to do. Whether we pass a major climate bill or not, there's plenty to do. If we succeed in passing it, we'll work to implement it. If we don't succeed in passing it, we'll work on the next most important things. So the same is true now. There's a lot of climate advocates who have their heads down now because we've taken some setbacks at the federal level. And I want to tell you, despite those setbacks, there's a bunch of things that are going really well, and we are by no means done. There's lots to do. So um, at the recent CCL conference in DC, one of the speakers made a point that I loved. I think it shocked everybody when he said it, but he said if there had never been an Inflation Reduction Act, there had never been any climate bill by that name, the bill that the Republicans passed just recently on a party line vote would be the biggest climate bill in history. That is quite remarkable. So the original spending estimate, the estimate for the total value of the tax credits when the Democrats passed the Inflation Reduction Act was 270 billion. It was written as an uncapped tax credit, which means however much clean energy people want to install, tax credits will go towards those projects. And if they build twice as much, then twice as much will be spent on tax credits. So by the beginning of 2025, that 270 billion had grown to 825 billion. Right? The reason is not that things got more expensive. The reason is that everybody always underestimates how much solar, wind, and batteries we're going to build. People are terrible at seeing exponential growth. So the bill had actually become quite fiscally expensive. It's not unreasonable that Republicans would want to trim that back. What they trimmed it back to was 340 billion worth of tax credits. So that's about 25% larger on the Congressional Budget Office's estimation than the original Inflation Reduction Act. Yeah, things are not quite prioritized the way we would prefer them. Solar and wind are the fastest growing technologies. They are the fastest thing to build. And right now it is almost the entirety of what people are building. Those now lose their tax credits, or at least they will soon. But some other technologies retained them and extended them that are just as important and probably in greater need of help, right? Because they have a longer time scale to market. Those are geothermal, nuclear, and batteries. Republicans also kept carbon capture tax credits. I don't have a ton of faith in carbon capture, even with the tax credit, but it's nevertheless remarkable. There is no reason you would subsidize carbon capture unless you cared about reducing carbon. There's no other purpose for it. So Republicans are now officially on the record as advocating spending money on taking carbon out of the atmosphere. That's pretty remarkable. So I mentioned this a moment ago, but right now, almost the entirety of what's getting built is wind, solar, and batteries. There's a little bit of gas makes up the remainder, but it's something like 95% of the capacity in the electricity interconnect queue is clean. That's really not going to change with or without the tax credits. Gas turbines are back. If you haven't already ordered gas turbines, they're back ordered about 7 years globally. If you already have your order in, we will build some gas. If you suddenly discover a desire to build gas, it's not happening right now. The only thing you can build is clean. So the next piece of good news is we saved more than we lost in the tax credits. Some of the versions that were proposed by both House and Senate were horrendous. It would have amounted to a complete repeal, right? If not in language, in effect. What we ended up getting, and with significant help from John Curtis and Chuck Grassley and Lisa Murkowski, was not only preserving those longer term technologies, but a significantly extended runway for wind and solar. So the big fight there was between a placed in service standard and a started construction standard. And they won that fight, and they got a started construction standard. So as long as you start construction within a year of when the bill passed, you are eligible for the tax credits. And if you start it within 6 months of when the bill passed, then you're not subject to any new foreign entities of concern requirements. So it's basically status quo. So anything that was already in the planning stages is easy to get started and still qualify. So basically, we're going to be building wind and solar with the tax credits for the remainder of Trump's presidency. That made a lot of Republican fiscal hawks upset. They really, really wanted a hard cutoff, particularly for wind and solar, and they didn't get it. The only thing they got in return was a promise from Trump to try to obstruct new wind and solar as much as he could, and that's where the playing field is right now. Thankfully, those same Republican senators are pushing back on that, and that was our ask for them. One of our three asks in this most recent lobby day was push back on any IRS guidance that further restricts the ability of wind and solar to claim those tax credits, and they have done exactly that. Curtis and Grassley currently have a hold on all IRS nominees until they get satisfaction that the administration is not going to try to curtail what Congress passed. So as much as we have not particularly seen Congress standing up for itself in the last year, this is really, really encouraging. So I would say our lobbying has been effective, and it continues to be effective. We have good relationships with all of our members of Congress. They like hearing from us. Even the offices that are not supportive of clean energy, like I'll name the Mike Lee office as an example, he has good staffers, and we get meetings with them. They eagerly meet with us, and we have things to talk about them with them. The next thing we're going to be working on after this is permitting reform. And Mike Lee is very likely to be one of the authors of that bill in the Senate, together with Martin Heinrich, his co-chair of the Energy and Natural Resources Committee in the Senate. So they're well aware of the need for bipartisanship. They're well aware of the need for that bill to include transmission, which is our big ask on permitting reform. We asked them to start from the Manchin-Barrasso Energy Permitting Reform Act, introduced in the last Congress and not passed. Couldn't get through, bipartisan hashing out of details. But Mike Lee voted for that bill in committee, and they seem open to that as a starting point. It's probably not everything they're going to want in a bill, and we'll see where that lands. But it's at least a reasonable conversation, even with that office. So as much as people that I run into occasionally want to hang their heads, everything we do with our congressional office is moving things in the right direction. Maybe not as fast or as far as we want, but our push is helping. And that feels good, getting up in the morning, being able to say that. So Dave, what else would you like me to cover?
So that's not just up to me. That was a great start.
Okay.
There's so much more you talked about. Lobbying successes would be of interest, I think.
Yeah. I was in 2 meetings. Most people had 3. I was scheduled for 3, but one had to get moved. The staffers often have, they call with last minute schedule changes. Anyway, I put it on top of another meeting, so I was only able to make 2 of them. My meetings were with the Blake Moore office and with the Mike Kennedy office. Mike Kennedy's a new legislator. He took Curtis's seat in the House when Curtis moved to the Senate. And the staffers that we have met with repeatedly in Curtis's office and Blake Moore's office are just wonderful. They're wonderful people. They're on our side. They understand Congress and how to negotiate. and how to work both with their colleagues and across the aisle. And pretty much everything we ask of them, they're already doing. With a legislator like Mike Kennedy, he comes into office without a solid environmental reputation, but he heard good things about us from Curtis, and he's already joined the Conservative Climate Caucus, which is something I think is a surprise to people that haven't met with him. And then he signed on to a letter together with Blake Moore asking the Senate to extend the tax credits to residential solar, which at the time of the writing of that language was cut out. I think Utah has a big residential solar industry, and he was hearing from more constituents than just us that was important. But it's nice to be able to start with a thank you, even for a legislator that doesn't have a great environmental record.
Hey, Tom, this is Dave Follett. Could we jump in with a question?
Yeah, please.
Well, I think what you've done with creating a relationship initially with Mia Love, but then also with John Curtis is pretty remarkable. And I wonder if you could tell us just a little about what maybe one of those, how it evolved and how you were able to get that relationship that you really have with him. I say with Curtis for sure, really a sense of mutual respect and trust. And anyway, yeah, if you'd share a little bit about that, I think it'd be really interesting for all of us.
Yeah, I mean, you can't you try, right? You try with all of them. It doesn't always work. The only thing I can say is it won't work if you're not open to it. If your heart's not open. And both John Curtis and Mia Love just turned out to be absolutely wonderful people. And I will say, at least in the case of Mia Love, I didn't expect it. She took me by surprise. She came in with a reputation as somebody who was not going to be at all friendly to these issues. And from the first 2 minutes of talking to her, my head was a little bit spinning of like, whoops, I think I read you wrong. Curtis, I already had heard good things about before I ever met him. And so that wasn't quite the surprise that he turned out to be so wonderful. But I don't know that I expected at the same time that he would turn out to be such a good friend. Right. And I consider him now a very close friend. And Mia Love, before her death, I considered her a very close friend. And that has been, I think, the single best thing for me about being associated with CCL is the opportunity to have that experience. So Mia Love, I met at a town hall when she was a candidate first, and just, went up to talk to her after the town hall and ask her questions about the environment. And she immediately told me about trail running, and how she wanted to be helpful on this topic. And it just was not what I expected from her. So it was little by little, I think each of us opening our hearts to each other and overcoming those assumptions. And then for her at the time, there were no Republicans talking about climate change. She was Republican number 7 on the Bipartisan Climate Solutions Caucus. And that was, for somebody from Utah, that was a huge, huge step. And I think it's something she wanted to do, her staff wanted to do. But for every legislator, you can only go as far as your constituents will permit. Right. And so if you're going to do something new like that out of the box, you have to do it step by step and see what kind of pushback you get from the constituents. And if you don't listen to your constituents, you're not going to stay in office. They're all well aware of that. So a lot of times I feel like when my friends who are not as connected to legislators talk about them, they talk about them as having a lack of courage. Like, if only they'd stand up. And I think often what they describe as a lack of courage is actually them responding to their constituents. It's just that my friends are in the minority. They're not the ones that the legislator has to listen to. So Mia Love, she held a town hall, she wrote an op-ed, little by little, then she joined the Climate Solutions Caucus, and then she started getting national press for this issue. And then she really leaned into it and made it part of her identity. And I think for Curtis, the same is true. Like, even more so than Mia Love, that is now his top identity as a U.S. senator. Everybody knows him as the clean energy senator on the Republican side.
Tom, you're going to spend some time with him on Monday, I believe.
Yeah, we have a hike, and I wish you could all join us and spend time with him. We capped this hike at 30, and we are now full. But we will. Curtis gives us more FaceTime than any other legislator I've ever interacted with. So we will have a 4-hour hike with him, and that's compared to previous hikes, that one's kind of on the short side. We've had hikes as long as 8 hours with him. The first one we ever did was, it was not our event, it was his event. He just held a public town hall as a hiking event on Mount Timpanogos. Dave was there, I was not. Dave Reiser, I think you were there too as well, right?
Yes, yes.
Yep. So that public town hall that he held evolved into an annual hike just with CCLers. So that's now our lobby meeting with him. And outdoors is just a wonderful time to be able to talk about these issues and not be across a desk and looking at an agenda.
What do you hope to ask him, Tom? What's on your mind there?
We're certainly going to be talking about current state of politics, but I think there's going to be more thinking than asking. He has really gone out on a limb on this issue. He threatened to vote no on the budget bill if the clean energy provisions didn't come out to his liking, and they did. And he currently has a hold on Trump's IRS nominees based on the way Trump has been treating wind and solar after the passage of the bill. So there's a lot to thank. I think in terms of upcoming legislation, we want to talk about where he sees permitting reform and bipartisanship. Whether there's any possibility of bringing Democrats and Republicans together on a bill that we know we need. But yeah, we try to come with asks, but we also try to have plenty of time for just chit chat and talking about families and kids and hobbies.
Hey, Tom, can I reconfirm then, when we are trying to draft our op-eds or letters to editor, permitting reform is probably a number one thing to address right now?
Yeah, the two top things right now are preserving what House and Senate passed, not letting the administration weaken them, and it is trying. And then bipartisan permitting reform, making it easier to build energy infrastructure of all kinds. And we know that is overwhelmingly going to benefit clean energy. Permitting reform has traditionally been a Republican wish. Democrats have often opposed it. And I think clean energy advocates are, not all of them, but many of them are now coming around to the fact that we really do need to build faster.
Thank you. So especially as to transmission, correct?
Yes. Transmission is the number one roadblock.
Gotcha.
And it's the thing that takes the longest. It can take 10 years to permit a transmission line.
Yeah. Thank you.
Right. So the goal is not in permitting reform. The goal is not just to blindly green light everything. The goal is just to get to the answer faster. It's going to be a yes, let's get to the yes faster. If it's going to be a no, let's get to the no faster, and not just have these projects tied up in endless lawsuits.
Got it.
What about, is there any local, state representative issues we need to be involved with our?
We don't know everything that's coming up yet for the next legislative session, but there will always be be lots of relevant legislation. I do know of a solar permitting bill, um, streamlining solar permitting, solar like online instant permitting for rooftop solar that Ray Ward is going to run, because I helped work on that bill.
Is
So
this plug-in solar or
no,
net?
that one already passed, the balcony
Oh,
solar.
okay.
Yeah, this is going to be normal rooftop installs. That is, the permitting for that is by municipality. Some are good and some are not good. Salt Lake City is quite good. Summit County is not very good. So it's going to be to enforce a standard and let people use an online tool to do their permitting and take the subjectivity out of it. And then I know that there was a bad solar bill trying to put new roadblocks in the way of farmers putting solar on their land, bunch of onerous new restrictions. And that was defeated in the last legislative session, thanks to the help of farmers who didn't like being told what to do on their land. So some version of that bill is coming back.
Tom, you've been around CCL for a long time. What are the most remarkable things that you've seen?
I mean, it started with me a love for me. I never thought I would see a politician change a position in front of me. Right? I mean, it took a couple of years. It wasn't like, okay, you convinced me, I changed my mind. But to go from one public image to the opposite in the space of 2 years on an issue I cared deeply about, that hooked me for life. That transformative experience for me was not, I did not expect to see that happen ever.
Bob Inglis and others have called Utah a head-turning state in CCL. What do you attribute that to?
I think it's Utah's character, right? I think people outside of Utah don't know what makes us tick, and they get surprised by us a lot. And I think we're worthy of it. I think Utah is a very thoughtful, pragmatic state. I think we're relatively open on science. We're relatively open on immigration. I don't think things are quite as rosy now as they were a few years ago. You know, there's an election denying, election controversy element that wasn't there a few years ago that makes me sad. But overall, I think we have a lot of wonderful things about our state, and we tend to elect pretty good people. We're more independent minded than people give us credit for. So they get surprised. So I think the LDS religion has a lot to do with it.
I'd go on by lots of questions. I'm not hearing from others. The young lady in iPhone 153 has a question.
That is Andy Barros, my mother-in-law.
Oh.
Andy, you're muted.
She's also in a car.
Yep.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, yes, we're headed to another meeting. Tom, could you talk a little bit about Mayor Mike and things that are going on in the coal areas, what's happening there, please?
Yeah, I just found out last night that Mayor Mike is in a tough re-election race.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So we held a town hall, a candidate event on climate change. And this was years ago when we were first getting to know John Curtis and he was first starting to get involved in these issues. His district director came to it and we talked to her after the event and she said it was wonderful, but you didn't have anybody there from coal country.
Right.
And we said, I would love to, but I don't know anybody from coal country. I don't know how they'll have those contacts. And she said, why don't you come with us to the Utah Rural Summit in Price, and I'll introduce you to some people. So we did, and we got to know Mayor Mike Corianos and some others down there. I mean, this was another hold your breath kind of thing for me. Climate advocate, I'm going to a coal town. Like, are they going to just run me out on a rail? And very, very surprising. I mean, I was wearing a CCL pin, but we had nice, polite, respectful conversations with people, and they just want economic help in their town. It doesn't have to be coal. It doesn't have to be energy. They just want jobs. And we're, of course, not opposed to that. So we've gotten to know Mayor Mike in the time since then, and again, become good friends with him. We did a trip down there last year and got a tour. He's a coal plant operator in the Hunter plant. So we got a tour of the coal plant. As an engineer, it's fairly shocking that I'd never been in a coal plant before. I should know where my power comes from. That thing is old and rickety. It's built in the 70s, but kind of a marvel of technology for 1970s engineering. So they know that coal is on the way out the door. I don't think all of them want to hear that, but Mike knows it. And Mike is busy trying to prepare his town for what comes after coal. There was just an announcement. I haven't heard anything from that community, but I know they're going to be thrilled about it. There was just an announcement that TerraPower is looking at putting a second power plant in Utah, nuclear power plant. The first one's in Kemmerer, Wyoming. And that's been something Mike has been angling for. So I would bet you when that location is announced, it's going to be Carbon or Emery County. It's going to be in that community. And that's going to be huge for them because they've got a trained energy workforce and disappearing jobs. They need something to keep their kids at home for, keep them all from moving out of the area.
That brings up another question, Tom. Last week, CCL sponsored a panel at the university on nuclear energy. You were there, Mike Maxwell and I, and maybe others. It was an excellent panel, but it may not have told the whole story. If you were on that panel, what would you add? What would you take away from that?
The folks that were on the panel were wonderful. It was an all-star panel, but they are all either from or associated with the nuclear industry. And I mean, they're all optimists, right? They want their technology to succeed. I want their technology to succeed too. I'm a lot more skeptical, not about nuclear proliferation, not about waste. I'm skeptical about costs, right? They have not proved they can do it yet. So every nuclear build goes massively over budget. Every nuclear startup says they've got the solution. I'll believe it when I see it. They have competitors. They won't win unless they can cut their costs at least in half.
But other countries are doing it.
Other countries are doing
tried.
it. Right. And permitting reform is a piece of that for sure. We have made it very hard to build things in this country, at least big pieces of infrastructure. And a nuclear plant is a big piece of infrastructure. They have hopes of making small modular designs that won't have those same constraints. Again, more power to them. I want them to succeed. I'll believe it when I see it.
So are those smaller modular ones, are those the one that Bill Gates keeps talking about? Is that the idea?
Theirs is not. The TerraPower one is not a small modular reactor. Yeah. It is a new design. It's got inherent safety features that the older designs don't have. It's got inherent energy storage, thermal energy storage, which is a wonderful feature. Lets nuclear follow the demand curve better instead of just running at a constant load.
The surprise for me was the talk about recycling fuel, that you can build nuclear power without any waste fuel, or you can use 95% of the waste again.
You can with the side effect that you are in the process creating bomb making materials, which then have to be tightly managed. So it's another thing that, yes, science knows how to do this. Whether we're actually going to do that, I don't know.
Whether we should, sounds like
Whether
that.
we should, I don't know either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
One thing we do know for sure is we're growing electricity demand now, and we haven't been for decades. So we need to build new stuff one way or another. And I want the stuff that we build to be clean. I want it to be zero carbon generation. So as far as I'm concerned, the more the merrier. Doesn't have to be only wind and solar. Bring on the geothermal, bring on the nuclear, bring on the battery storage.
Hey, Tom, Mike Maxwell. So I come to the whole nuclear discussion as somebody who worked in that industry a few years back, and I kind of hear, the rhetoric, and it's surprising to me, and particularly with Curtis, that he has this impression. I mean, he told me this on the hike last year that, well, we're a lot closer with nuclear to getting to climate mitigation energy production than with with thermal, and and um, and that's I've just kind of been mystified that since, and I've even talked to people in the nuclear industry that talked about timelines for these technologies to check that. And, generally, I mean, we're still 10 to 20 years away from anything that might be affordable at scale.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious if that, if you've got an impression on why that, why that belief, why aren't we going, more aggressively towards thermal? We've got a fantastic case study down in Beaver, as opposed to, going guns blazing down this nuclear path with all of the waste issues that you have to deal with that, as well as the uncertainty about whether it actually will ever be affordable. Do you have just any thoughts on what you've heard from these folks and why that impression seems to be the case? Not with the Curtis. I mean, I kind of hear the same thing from Governor Cox and others here in the state. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I think nuclear has become an article of faith among Republicans.
Mm.
And I think in part it's a response to environmentalism on the left that has traditionally favored wind and solar. And it hasn't left any room for Republicans to enter the conversation. So I think being in favor of nuclear has been a way in the door for them. Right? We
And you don't think they get that with thermal?
with geothermal?
Yeah.
Everybody loves geothermal now.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
everybody loves it. Why aren't we?
Geothermal's the only thing out there that has no political enemies. It's wonderful.
Not yet. It'll get there, but
It's also having just extremely promising success down the development curve. So
right,
we're going to have, working geothermal in the next year
right, yeah.
in Utah, power producing, and in the next 2 or 3 years, it's going to be up to like 10% of Utah's power. That is amazing. And it's going to be years before the first of these nuclear demonstration projects comes online.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to have some amazing PR here in Utah in the next 9 months.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of people racing.
Does that, I mean, again, Curtis and Kennedy, these guys that seem to be receptive to this, are they dialed into that, or are they just repeating the Republican talking points because that's what they're supposed to do as a good Republican right now when it comes to nuclear?
Right. I think partly because geothermal has no enemies, that it's not as politically effective to be talking about as it is for Republicans to be talking about nuclear.
Oh, okay.
But no, they're all very aware of it, and they're all very in favor of it. And Celeste Malloy and Blake Moore's, actually Mike Lee as well, have introduced bills to speed up the permitting process for geothermal.
Cool.
That we support.
Yeah.
Tom, the cynics among us would say that nuclear energy is favored because it is not a threat to oil and gas. It's 10 years, 20 years out.
Right.
So
I think there's an element of that too. It's a very safe thing to advocate for if you really didn't want anything to change.
yeah, if you're funded by oil and gas, You're not offending anyone, but
Yeah.
Dave,
I,
is that cynic you're talking about me?
speak for yourself.
I've been
Right.
outed.
But no, I do think there's an element of that it is, if you know it's not coming for 10 years, nothing stops you from beating the drum and saying, let's build more nuclear. Like, great, okay, let's build more nuclear. When can you have it here?
Yeah, we're just going to spend so much money.
Well, the market's going to dictate that, right? Yes, we'll spend some federal dollars pushing new technologies. We should. These startup technologies are not going to happen without a helpful push. But then after that, it's just going to be determined by their costs. If they can't compete with the other technologies, we're not going to build them.
Yeah.
Tom, you may not know that we have a genuine geologist and hydrologist with us. I wonder if, Brian, you want to comment on geothermal and what you know about that.
Well, it's kind of strange, Dave, because I'm used to studying water that goes down, and this water goes up.
Oh, it's all the same, isn't it?
No, I think it's, I've got to join the bandwagon. It's a great resource, and Utah's got enough to make a real demonstration of how it can be used.
You know how it gets there, so they can.
Yeah, I know the water goes down.
Oh, thanks.
Before it goes
Thanks
up.
for your input.
Yeah, that's the first thing I know about hydrology. It flows downhill.
Yep.
Maybe the only thing I know about hydrology.
Okay.
I had a question. Tom, you mentioned that electric demand is going up, and you kind of indicated that it hadn't been and now is. Do you think that's attributable to AI?
Yes. AI is there are multiple drivers, but AI is the biggest one.
Yeah.
And the forecast, I mean, it hasn't grown that much yet, but the forecast for the next decade is almost entirely driven by AI.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll see, just like nuclear, we'll see if that actually turns out to be true.
Mm-hmm.
But right now, they're just throwing around astounding numbers for the amount of power they're going to need.
Oh, yeah. It's going to outcompete us all.
Yep. Well, unless we get good at building stuff, it's going to drive up cost. It's going to drive up electricity prices because more demand for a scarce commodity. So the good news is you really can't build fossil fuel generation in that amount right now. The bad news is we got to build something. So we better get going.
Sounds
So
like
Tom,
in the
if they
next
can't-
year.
If you can't build gas and they certainly don't want coal, aren't they going to go for wind and solar and batteries?
They will.
They're smart
Yeah.
enough to know that's the option.
Yes, they will, but you can only do so much on those without new transmission lines, right? The developers, of course, try to site them where they have existing transmission, but at the rate of growth we're talking about, you'll run out of that soon. So got to build transmission too.
See, Tom,
But yeah, we're going to see more and more actual behind the meter electricity generation. So data centers bringing their own generation and living as much as they can off the grid.
see,
Yeah, Dave.
President Trump has talked about bringing back big, beautiful coal. Do you know of progress in that regard? I've heard, for instance, that there's the possibility of the train going from Vernal, to carry coal and stuff is maybe going to happen. I don't know if there are other things, but I just wonder if you're aware of movement in that direction to try to redevelop coal.
Yeah, so the train is probably going to happen, and it's going to carry oil from Vernal to Price. They're currently trucking it. But we haven't built a coal plant in this country since 2013. Trump promised a coal resurgence his first term. Nobody built any coal plants. He's promising a coal resurgence now. Nobody's building any coal plants. There are none in the planning stages. There are none in the permitting stages. I'm quite confident in saying there aren't going to be any before the end of Trump's term. What probably will happen is coal plants slated for retirement, like Intermountain Power, will now not retire because it's too valuable an asset to retire when we're actually growing electricity demand. That's like a $4 billion asset. So what looked like aging, unneeded power generation when we had flat demand now looks like, somebody's very valuable asset in growing demand. But building a new coal plant that's going to take years, I mean, it's going to be almost as expensive and time consuming as building nuclear. And then you don't know what environmental regulations are going to be like when you're done building it. So I don't think it's happening.
Tom, any thoughts about the endangerment finding? What's going to happen there?
Yeah. I listened to a good podcast on this last week. It was expected all along. Trump's team has been making their hostility to the endangerment finding known for a long time. That's the finding by the Supreme Court has held twice that carbon dioxide meets the definition of a pollutant under the Clean Air Act. And the EPA has both the authority and the responsibility to regulate it. Now, we haven't actually seen any effective regulations go into effect. The only thing along those lines that actually is in effect is the fuel economy standards for vehicles. No power plant standards have gone into effect yet through 2 presidential terms. So I don't actually think the endangerment finding is going to make any difference whatsoever to the path of our emissions. I do think it matters a lot politically to be able to say, hey, the Supreme Court agrees, right? The very conservative Supreme Court has said twice that CO2 is a pollutant. I don't want to lose that political talking point. And there is hope. I mean, the fuel economy standards are not nothing. That is a significant effect. The Trump administration is really shooting for the moon on this one. They might actually prevail with some kind of argument that we're only, 14% of the world's emissions. We don't actually matter that much. So EPA shouldn't be able to regulate because it's too damaging to the economy in return for what you get. But they're trying for much, much more than that. They're trying to overturn the whole scientific basis and say that CO2 doesn't cause climate change. And they have to present evidence for that. Like this is an actual court of law with actual sworn testimony. I don't see them succeeding.
Trump has 5 scientists of some renown on his team that lean that direction in various degrees.
Yeah, I don't
William
think
Hopper and others. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think any of them actually go as far as the claim that they're trying to make in court, that CO2 does not cause climate change. I think they all lean towards the first argument that it doesn't matter that much.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they're going to have a really tough time with that argument.
I hope it's a transparent and fair discussion.
Yeah.
That could be helpful.
Yeah.
And plants need CO2.
And they do.
There's no question of that.
We'll kill all the plants.
I mean, their argument is that they need to emit it or we'll lose all the plants.
I think their argument is it's at least neutral for humanity and beneficial for plants and does not cause warming, and therefore no one should spend any time regulating it. Yeah.
There you go.
So it's going to be a tough road making that argument.
The CO2 Society certainly is arguing that very thing.
Yep. So yeah, someone persuaded them to make the maximalist argument to the court and not just, what might get them a win.
Tom, any comments on where we're going as a chapter at the state in CCL, what are we going to do to grow and to move on?
I mean, I know there are people here from beyond Utah, but I think, like Bob Inglis calls us, the head turner state, or a head turner state. We are, if you're looking for bipartisan climate legislation, there are very few places to get it from, and Utah is one of them. We're a critically important state in the whole national process. New people who join CCL in Utah are surprised to find that out.
I'd be interested if there are any plans to do things like that nuclear panel in other areas about wind and solar and permitting and Great Salt Lake and all things like that.
I know that the folks that
a lot
did
of
the
work.
nuclear panel would like to do it again.
Yeah.
This was a bit of a first trial run for them. And I think they had a good experience. So I think, yeah, Great Salt Lake is indirectly climate change. Climate change isn't the main driver of what's going on there, but there is a ton of legitimate interest in the Great Salt Lake and in solutions to get more water to it. So I think we should lend our support to that.
Is Mike Maxwell still on? You might want to make a. Okay, they're doing a nuclear panel down in BYU.
Oh,
sponsored.
that's great.
Do you know about that?
I didn't.
That will be of interest to a lot of folks.
Mm-hmm.
A number of things are going on with in that space, and with the organizations that are allied with the LDS Action Team.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to attend that if I can.
Okay.
Haven't had enough contact at BYU lately.
Yeah. It looks like Mike dropped off. But, anyone else know about that? No.
So for those of you who don't know, BYU students have been extremely supportive throughout my time with CCL, and it's been just absolutely wonderful. We've had more support at BYU than we have at the University of Utah. Had a lot of BYU students come to DC to lobby with us. We had a BYU chapter for a little while.
Did any come this year from BYU?
What's that?
Any come this year to
No.
Washington?
No, we just need, college students come and go, and it's hard to keep college chapters going because students turn over and somebody has to pick it up and keep it alive. But yeah, we've had such good experiences and relationships there. I'd like to see if we can get something started again. My wife and I took Ben Abbott's introductory climate change class, climate science class at BYU online during COVID.
Pass fail?
He didn't. I didn't take it for a grade. I was not legitimately enrolled, but he opened the class up to the public, and so I took it and did all the assignments. And the main motivation for me was I wanted to hear the topic from the LDS perspective. I want to hear it from BYU's language.
Was it any different than you expect from the U?
It was massively different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What stood out to you?
The whole first month of it was it was a comparative religion study, how different religions view the environment. I mean, the rest of it was very climate sciencey, but every class started with a prayer, of course, and every prayer had to do with climate change and the environment. So no, the whole thing was wonderful, and it's such eager, earnest students. I thought good things about BYU before, but I didn't expect it to be that wonderful.
Hey, Tom, before you go,
Mhm.
I just have a sort of a personal question. So there is just a regular patter of rain of sort of bad news about things going on and so forth. How do you keep optimistic? Because this is a fairly buoyant and good message. How do you do that?
That's a great question. Thank you for asking it. I tend to be an optimistic person, and I tend to focus on things I can control and not dwell on the things I can't and let it beat me up. But the news lately has been hard. So right now it takes an effort to stay in that headspace. And it helps me to live a healthy, productive life, to keep myself in that headspace and focus on what I can do and how I can be helpful, and not, the things that lead to spiraling out of control and feeling down in the dumps. So this work is a big part of it. Even if I can't, single-handedly wrench our society around to where I want it to go, I know I'm helping, and I know I'm pushing in the right direction, and I know that it is having an effect. So that's all I can ask for, is to be a cog in the wheel and help stuff go in the right direction.
Yeah, it's been a great discussion.
Thank you.
Thanks for being with us.
Yeah. Thanks for all
Thank
you
you.
do, Tom.
Thank you all.
Been nice to hear from you again, Tom.
Thanks.
Yeah. Is there a lobby meeting this fall, Tom?
I think there will be a fall lobby day. It's not planned yet, and I think it will be virtual,
Yeah.
as it was last fall.
Okay, so
We do have the conservative climate summit coming up.
yes.
That is open to the public, and those of you in Utah should definitely attend.
Okay. Is CCL tabling there and playing a role with the summit?
We have, in the past, we've just attended and not tabled. The tabling hasn't been very busy. But Bob Inglis was trying to talk us into tabling this year, so I'm not sure if we will or not.
Yeah.
I think he wanted to do a combined Republic EN and CCL table. So we may end up doing that.
The action team might want to join you or to do it as well.
Yeah,
Thomas, do we have plans for that?
that would be a plus.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah. Anyway, we'll talk that up.
Shannon?
I just want to say that last night I attended a, a meeting of Surge, Show Up for Racial Justice. And that was wonderful. But tonight was even better, Tom. The optimism, I understand the present situation, but the optimism that you project and the good facts that you project give me hope, which is what we all need.
Thank
and
you.
reason to keep on going.
Yep.
So I want to thank you so much. This has been wonderful. I'm not a scientist, as you know. I'm not an engineer, but I really appreciate your work and obviously the work of other people on this Zoom call. Thank you.
Thank you.
We need more smart, cool, calm heads like you.
Thomas has always been that guy.
With impeccable English skills.
Mhm.
Yes.
Which he has too, yes. Yes. Critical thinking skills. His father used to come to my class as an engineer and talk about great literature. And all the males in the class that wanted to be engineers, and I'll be gender specific about that because I didn't have females in those years that wanted to be engineers, but they would all perk up, and then he would lead them into realizing that there were great ideas in literature not to be dismissed. So, and Thomas's mother also came. So there's a great heritage there. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
And his sister is brilliant as well. I was lucky to have both of them and still count them as my friends.
I've got to check out Thomas and Tom.
Thank you, everyone, for attending.
Thank you all.
Thanks so much.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Tom. It's a real shot in the arm. It's good.
Tom.
Thank you.